He thinks there's this vast conspiracy between us to sow false information.
Yeah.
I don't want to say anything false about Hunter Biden and Kevin Morris. That's the difference between you and me and him. I don't want to lie.
No, that's a very, very good point. We hold stuff back because we can't verify.
Of course, there's so much in this report that I want to include in the lawyer on our board. There are many crimes that we didn't include because we don't have 2 pieces of primary source evidence. We need 2 to get past the Biden plausible deniability wall, which is what we call it. There's 459 criminal violations in this laptop.
Hello and welcome to the Anne and Phelim Scoop, and the microphone is working. Yes, it is. Did we check that, Anne?
We did.
Okay, green light going. So, Anne McElhinney, what's on the Anne and Phelim Scoop today?
We have a very, very full scoop today.
By the way, let us know in the comments in YouTube or on the Apple podcast. Is the podcast too long? Would you like more of it? We generally try and keep it about 45 minutes, 35 minutes, but sometimes it's just so interesting. We just like bringing you so much of the madness that it goes into an hour, and no one ever complains. So
no, we haven't had a complaint about the length yet.
So let us know what your ideal length is. So on the show today, how biased is the American legal system? Very, very biased. In fact, this is kind of a theme of this podcast. How the legal system across the planet, there's no such thing as a presumption of innocence anymore. There's no such thing as a fair trial. Having people condemned before, people are now condemned before trial. So that's kind of a theme of this week's show, the madness of the judicial system, how it's contagious and they learn bad habits from each other. So we speak to one journalist activist who's dedicated his life to exposing the Biden crime family, who are currently ruling the United States of America. And he's now been sued by Hunter Biden's crazy, deceitful lawyer. And I say that with the full evidence behind me.
Yes, having met
his crazy, deceitful lawyer. So he's been sued by Hunter Biden's crazy, deceitful lawyer for breach of privacy, for looking at and publicizing Hunter Biden's hard drive, even though Hunter Biden is still denying it is his hard drive. And the judicial system is taking this seriously. So that is how crazy the world is.
And the leftist media are becoming increasingly desperate and dishonest in their desire to bring down Clarence Thomas. We expose the lies and omissions behind the latest attacks.
Yes, and so across the pond, as they say, Police Scotland. Scotland, they have a hate crime bill. In any country that has a hate crime bill, the first thing that means is civil liberties are thrown in the toilet. So they have a hate crime bill going into effect, and the police are creating a special unit because there's no crime in Scotland at all. A special unit so you can be prosecuted for misgendering people and even for preventing men going to the women's toilets.
And in more madness, complete madness, a woman arrested for praying silently outside of a UK abortion clinic has had her charges dropped. But why was she ever arrested in the first place? We bring you that story. And talking about abortion, we smash the myths that late-term abortions are somehow rare, because this is a very popular trope from the pro-abortion side. We want to remind everyone that third trimesters are more common than assault rifle deaths in the United States.
Yes, and LA, our hometown, has a truly terrible homeless problem caused and supported by the homeless industrial complex, and their solution is to not to fine people for camping on the streets, not to fine people for taking drugs on the street, not to prosecute petty crime and get these criminals off the street. No, their idea is to force LA hotels to house the homeless. So putting everyone in these hotels, including the staff, in danger. And of course, it's the unions that are behind it. And we weren't going to talk about Russell Brand or the allegations about him until the British state told us we couldn't. The justice system, as I said, the justice system has been corrupted all over the planet, and they're using attacks on people like Russell Brand to. Well, we don't care about Russell. I don't like Russell Brand. Never liked him, even when he was kind of conservative or whatever. I didn't buy it. But they're doing that to soften us up for when they come for us. Don't forget, they prosecuted Kevin Spacey and nobody cared, and then they used the same legislation to go after Donald Trump.
And we're going to finish the program today with, I think, actually 2 videos. I found another one from a very posh school in Limerick in Ireland. And these videos have been discovered by our friend, our 14-year-old friend, Bran Dove, who we met again at that march last week. And these 2 videos are from a very posh school in Limerick that is very, very successfully brainwashing their kids. And the videos really ought to be watched because huge, massive resources are being spent on brainwashing these kids with woke ideology. Meanwhile, I'd love to know how well they're doing academically. It's unbelievable, the resources and the money that's been spent here. It's extraordinary.
So, first of all, we're going over now to interview Garrett Ziegler. Garrett, who's been on the show before, is the founder of Marco Polo, a research group dedicated to exposing corruption, blackmail, malfeasance, you name it. He used to work in the Trump administration, and it's why we have him on this time. Well, we always want him on, but why we have him on this time is Hunter Biden's just filed a lawsuit against Garrett for posting pictures from Hunter Biden, for posting pictures and information and from Hunter Biden's laptop. So, and he's been sued for breach of privacy, even though Hunter denies it is his laptop, has never admitted it is his laptop. So let's go over now to Garrett Ziegler and try and make sense of this madness. And you'll also hear how we almost got ensnared in this lawsuit through Hunter Biden's deceitful lawyer, and I use that word with all the force of law behind. Let's go over that interview now that we did earlier. So, welcome to the show, Garrett Ziegler. As I said, he's been on the show before. He's the founder of Marco Polo, a research group dedicated to exposing corruption and blackmail. He is a former Trump administration official. I'd love to have him on every week, actually, but the reason I have him on this week in particular is Hunter Biden's lawyer, Kevin Morris, has just filed a lawsuit against Garrett for posting pictures and information, but even though Hunter still denies that the laptop is his. So, welcome to the show, Garrett.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Tell me, who is Kevin Morris? Like, tell everyone out there, who is Kevin Morris? Why you've entered his trajectory, and what is the truth about this lawsuit?
Well, Kevin Morris is a Media, Pennsylvania native, and he went to Cornell for undergrad, NYU for law school, and like you said, is very degenerate. The Daily Mail, which I had nothing to do with, got photos of him a couple months ago taking a huge bong hit on his porch. So this is not someone who, with wealth and influence, has taken on more refined hobbies. He's still the scummy person that he was before the wealth. He filed a lawsuit. Hunter Biden's personal attorney filed a lawsuit against me in May.
Let's tell people, because lots of people out there don't know that Kevin Morris is Hunter Biden's attorney. And he's also one of probably the richest lawyers in Hollywood. He's part of the South Park team. And we have we in the Unreported Story Society and the My Son Hunter movie have a personal experience with him. So tell me about him, who Kevin Morris is in with reference to Hunter Biden and where he fits in the Biden universe.
Well, your story actually in part inspired us to dig into him further. So at the time that the news broke, and he leaked this news, by the way, in May of 2022, those CBS News articles were his doing and his team's doing. And I have no idea why Catherine Herridge ran with those articles. So May 22 comes, and all these articles appear that Kevin has paid Hunter's back taxes and is paying for his lifestyle, essentially. But amidst all of those financial articles, there's an article that comes out in the New York Post detailing his infiltration operation.
Yeah, when you say infiltrated, so let me explain to the people out there. We were making the My Son Hunter movie out in Serbia, which you can watch for free, by the way, on mysonhuntermovie.com. And it's directed by Robert Davi, starring Lawrence Fox, Gina Carano, John James, written by Brian Godawa. It's a great movie, and they hate it. And Kevin, this lawyer, so all of a sudden, this lawyer turned
filmmaker arrived in Serbia, in Belgrade, with a crew saying, I'm making a documentary about Hunter Biden. I'm attached to South Park, and this is a documentary under their umbrella. And, Google showed nothing except that he was a very, very successful lawyer in Hollywood attached to South Park. And South Park, by the way, would be very, they would be skeptical of Hunter Biden and the Bidens from their politics. So we cooperated fully. He interviewed me for 6 hours. He had unrivaled access to the set. Look, we're very open. I have no problem answering questions from antagonistic journalists, antagonistic lawyers, nothing to hide. But he kept asking me a lot of questions about where we got the laptop and where we got the hard drive, and did we know who else had the hard drive and where it came from, and what Steve Bannon did with this and what Steve Bannon did with that, and Giuliani did with the other. And I know Steve Bannon, and and funny enough, when I get together with Steve Bannon, I don't ask him about the laptop because I don't care how. To me, it's not important how it arrived as long as it's genuine, and then we have to analyze the contents. Turns out, as you say, in CBS, suddenly CBS News, 8 months afterwards, ran an article saying Kevin Morris is Hunter Biden's personal lawyer and has paid off his back taxes and is continuing to fund his lifestyle and is leading an aggressive counter campaign to exonerate Hunter Biden and put people like me and you in prison or in penury.
Yes.
And suddenly it all makes sense that he was out there, or
he lied to you.
Unethically, as he lied.
Yes,
He
I say
lied.
infiltrated
And he lied by
through lies, and he broke California state bar rules to do it. He materially misrepresented
100%.
his identity, and he should be disbarred.
Sort of to get ahead of ourselves, I have made a complaint to the California State Bar Association. It took them 6 months to even acknowledge it. And then they said they were investigating it. Then they said that it had moved up to the next level. And then nothing. Crickets. I think then I had to bombard them with messages. They've appointed new investigators. They asked me some questions. I answered them. But crickets. So let's not. But anyway, tell me how your experience of Kevin Morris and what you're facing now.
I feel your pain in that there is so much backstory. So if I'm viewing this and don't have any idea who Garrett Ziegler is, and it's a pretty good chance they don't have any idea. The backstory for us starts at those leaked CBS News articles. And my friend, who's not even in the country, by the way, he's not even residing in the United States, which is very important from a legal perspective because Kevin Morris has included him in John Doe's 1 through 10. But my friend texted Kevin pretending to be a left-wing hacktivist, giving Kevin ridiculous information about Hunter Biden's laptop, all lies, in an effort to get him to admit that he would pay him in exchange for this falsified data. Kevin is an idiot, so he did admit to that. He even offered. My friend didn't even have to bring it up first. That's how eager this guy is to commit felonies. And through all that, that text exchange between my friend and Kevin Morris, and by the way, Miranda Devine, the one who published the piece that's at the center of Morris's lawsuit against us in May, or that he filed in May, excuse me, Miranda would be able to file an affidavit that says that I wasn't Kevin's interlocutor. It's obvious that I'm not. The entire syntax is not me. But anyways, Miranda publishes this ridiculous mind map that Kevin, in his likely weed-induced haze, has produced that gives a completely BS account of the laptop.
Let me just put that map up there. Let's just put that map up there. It's
Report on the Biden laptop. It's a comprehensive dossier of the device's contents. We've had $1,000 bounty.
And where can people get that?
MarcoPoloUSA.org. It's free to read online. They can download the PDF or the reader view. And in this report, we do publish the mind map. And the way I describe it, because I was the lead author, but I took particular interest in Morris's page. we called it a beautiful mind inspired schematic. It's that movie about Nash, the schizophrenic professor at Princeton. This looks like Nash's whiteboard when he's just in the throes of schizophrenia. So, again, this from a sociological perspective, our group finds it hilarious that Kevin Morris got a taste of his own medicine. And unlike what he did to you guys, we weren't breaking California state bar rules. You assume that because he was an attorney, he is bound by different standards. It's insane what he did.
Because he was a lawyer, we assumed he would not be lying. He would not be misrepresenting himself. That's
Yes.
what you get when you are a lawyer. You get the respect of the California State Bar Association.
Yes.
And you know, obviously, you don't trust lawyers, but you know, they can't lie to you.
Well, and think about the context, and you didn't ask me to do this, but I feel compelled. Think about the context. Number one, when this is going down in Serbia, there is no news linking Morris to Biden, number one. And number two,
Yeah.
you are on set for a project for which you probably prepared for at least 10 months straight. So it's not your job to vet every single person on that set. That's literally not your job. There's no articles linking Morris to Hunter. And he had with Rob, by the way, the reason why Morris sued me, and Hunter just sued me 2 weeks ago. So that was Hunter's suit. And Morris sued me back in state court in May. That one will get thrown out because it's so ridiculous. But the suit for Morris, one thing that we bring up is this was not a solo thing. We've really focused on Rob Bindler and Jason Cohn in our research because they're still producing this ridiculous documentary. And it's our goal as an activist opposition research group to totally destroy that documentary. So we put Bindler and Cohn in our dossier. And I think that's really been a bee in Morris's bonnet.
You know, the guys, don't lie about who you are, and don't use the cover of a lawyer. Now, journalists are allowed to go undercover and misrepresent who they are, but not using a lawyer as a cover. It's just, you can't do it. Because if you came to me and said, I'm here making a documentary, I would do a lot of checking.
Of course.
But if you say I'm a lawyer making a documentary, that's a different thing. And I never for one moment thought, like, I thought, well, he'd probably do a hatchet job. He's Hollywood, even though he is South Park. I didn't care. But I never thought he'd be there gathering evidence for his client for lawsuits.
That imprimatur of South Park enabled the lying in Con. If they didn't have that, I think, to go back on, your defenses would have been up more. But and just the emails are so duplicitous. How Bindler puts Kyiv in parentheses. I'm fascinated with this whole affair. And after Hunter's plea deal went south, we saw those pictures on the tarmac on Kevin's, outside of Kevin's plane, and there's Bindler right with the documentary crew. So they're still going forward with this documentary after all that has happened. They still try to resurrect Hunter. It's fascinating the delusions they'll go to.
I think they're still filming because it allows Kevin Morris to pretend that he was there making a documentary. I'm not sure the documentary is going ahead. You know, I think it's cover.
I think that'd be smart for them to do.
And funny, I remember looking at them on the set, and they were filming for 16 hours a day, and I'm thinking, amateurs. Nobody films that much. It creates a complete mess when you edit. It creates a complete mess. It just gives the editor a nightmare. Too much footage. And of course, they weren't caring about the editor. They wanted evidence to bring lawsuits against us. Apparently, he's told people, and I won't say who, he's told people, I will own the movie in a year. McAleer's going to, he's going to be so sued, and he's going to, I will own. And it's like, well, we still own it.
Of course, no, Morris is as cocky as Hunter, which is a feat that is difficult to achieve. And I think that he has exaggerated a little bit of his influence over lawfare. For example, he told my friend that they have SDNY prosecutors against us or looking into us, and I think maybe they have former, but any objective person looks at this guy and he looks like the disheveled Geico caveman. I mean, beyond his money, there's very
No,
few
no,
redeeming
he's.
qualities about him. I mean, I don't look at him as particularly
I think
intelligent
that's
or
and that's
charismatic
useful for
or
Hunter.
attractive.
Yes. Well, first of all, tell me about Hunter. Tell me the nuts and bolts of Hunter's lawsuit against you. No, Kevin's came first, did it? Yeah, Kevin's came first. Tell me about Kevin's, and then tell me about Hunter's.
Kevin's was filed on April 4th, but we weren't served for a couple weeks afterwards. That is in the LA County
bless you.
Superior Court. And he's
Mm.
suing us for emotional distress and harassment and doxing, even though the doxing statute is a penal code, which means that it has to be brought by a DA. It has to be brought by the government. There's no private right of
Mhm.
action for doxing in California. So it's cost Marco Polo $180,000. He's already tacitly threatened the attorneys at Pryor Cashman, where our attorney is, the firm where our attorney is, Tom Vidal, to basically stand down. So Kevin has already violated other bar rules by having ex parte communications
Mhm.
with an opposing counsel, tacitly threatening them to lay off. But they realized that we're not going to go quietly into the night. So they wanted to
Mhm.
preempt their loss in Kevin's lawsuit, which they see coming down the pike with Hunter's lawsuit, which is a violation. He's alleging that we hacked him. It's all ridiculous information. We call it Schrodinger's laptop. That's what we have been tagging Abby Lowell on Twitter, calling it. First of all, that's hilarious, if I may be so bold to admit that. But like you started this interview, Hunter wants to say, it's not my data. I can't prove that it's my data. But hey, you're stealing my data. It's Schrodinger's laptop. I'm going to keep
Yeah.
running with that. I'm going to hopefully say that enough times that it burns at Abby Lowell's brainstem. But Abby Lowell is the one who's bringing the suit. I have a lot of experience with him. I was the witness for the mother of Hunter Biden's child in Arkansas in the spring. And as part of that, I was in a 9-hour deposition with Lowell. He's as venomous and mendacious in person as he is in the courtroom. But Lowell is bringing this as a violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, which, again, is a criminal statute that usually DAs bring. And there is a private right of action in California, but the bottom line up front is this. We're the third-hand receiver of this. It went from McIsaac to Costello to Rudy to our group. And the underlying motive is to get the court to say that we're not legitimate publishers. That's how evil these people are. Because we publish things and writings that they don't like, they're deeming us not legitimate publishers. Ergo, we can't be in receipt of what they allege to be stolen information and stolen data. First of all, it's not stolen. We have the damn repair authorization form. Second of all, our report, and I'm going to toot our own horn here, our report has been read over 7 million times. We've had over 7 million unique IP addresses because it's free to read online. And that is substantial considering the censorship we're going through. In fact, an executive at Microsoft, Vinny Staropoli, has been hired by Kevin Morris, and he made an appearance, an affidavit in Kevin's lawsuit against us. But Vinny has basically censored our report on Microsoft's Edge browser. If you try to go to marcopolousa.org on Microsoft's Edge browser, it puts a huge red screen up saying that this site could steal your financial information, even though there's no payment form on the site. So if it's not censorship per se, it's defamation per se. if we win this suit against Morris, we're going to take his legal fees that he owes us and sue Microsoft for defamation per se, because I'm a conservative.
Excellent.
So I think Microsoft has the ability to throttle sites, but what they do not have the ability to do is put up a defamatory message about the site. So in this saga,
Yeah.
we have Microsoft executives censoring us, the attorney for the son of the President of the United States suing us in state court, and then we have the son of the President of the United States using Bill Clinton's old lawyer and Menendez's lawyer, new and old. Remember, Abby Lowell, the guy who was repping Hunter Biden, he'll make an appearance on Wednesday in the SDNY for Menendez again. He's repping him again, hilariously.
Wow.
So, and their whole goal is to just bankrupt me, because they figured out that I'm not making much money at all doing this. I'm not even in DC. So I'm not motivated by money. There's no amount of money that Kevin Morris can throw my way to stop me doing this. I don't work in politics, so they can't say there's some FEC violation that I'm committing. So their only goal is to try to bankrupt me through lawfare. That's all they have left.
I mean, we could talk all day about this, but how can people find out about your organization? How can they donate to it?
They can. We set up a legal defense fund at fightbiden.org. That's the site. And then I urge them all to go to marcopolousa.org, read the report online before you buy a copy, and use our keyword search to type in Morris, Bindler, Cohn, Kohn.
McAleer.
Yeah, yes, you're in there too, because we explain the whole thing. We put your state bar complaint in there. Well, I just want to say I want to talk more about what went down in Serbia, because if the California state court case is not dismissed, because right now Discovery State, get this, he files the lawsuit 1 week later. They send us discovery request for my communications between like Donald Trump Jr. and me about Hunter Biden, even though Hunter wasn't the plaintiff. It's so, you meaning it was a pure fishing expedition. So, of course, this is Kevin's attempt to find out what and I've only texted with DJT Jr. like twice to send him the report. Like, he thinks there's this vast conspiracy between us to sow false information.
Yeah.
I don't want to say anything false about Hunter Biden and Kevin Morris. That's the difference between you and me and him. I don't want to lie.
No, that's a very, very good point. We're actually, we hold stuff back because we can't verify.
Of course, there's so much in this report that I want to include in the lawyer on our board, who's old as my dad and has more wisdom than I do. There are many crimes that we didn't include because we don't have two pieces of primary source evidence. We need two to get past the Biden plausible deniability wall, which is what we call it, which is what Jimmy Biden's favorite phrase is. So the number, though, is 459. There's 459 criminal violations in this laptop. And that is because we went through it for 18 months. And all the emails and photos, I think that's why they're so mad at us. It's because we've created these databases that other writers can use.
Oh yeah, no, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. That's why they're so mad at you, because you've done a great job.
Well, thank you.
So people need to go to marcopolo.com. How can they find you on social media?
We're on Twitter, Marco Polo 501c3. Another URL that goes to our website is marcopolo501c3.org. If you go there, it has all of our social media, all the links to the emails and the photos, which everybody can download themselves, because that's part of our goal, is to create a permanent repository for this data. And every day that's online, Kevin Morris grows another gray hair. I think you and I have aged that guy a decade in 18 months. He looked like death warmed over at the court date.
I'll be honest. When I met him in Serbia, he looked like a young Hollywood dude. And I saw the picture of him on his balcony smoking dope. And I'm saying, they've made a mistake. That's not Kevin Morris. You look, people can go to the Daily Mail and look at the photographs. Maybe we'll put it up there. I was going,
Yes.
that's not Kevin
When-
Morris, is it?
When we get off the line, I want to send you this photo of him at the courthouse. He was following Hunter. It was on the July 26th. His forehead looks like a pug dog. There's so many crinkles in his forehead. He looks like he has pug dog skin. It's so funny. He is totally wrecked. We collectively have unintentionally wrecked this dude.
Doesn't take a genius to know that as a lawyer you can't lie about who you're representing and go and gather evidence from someone and question them at length for 6 hours under false pretenses and film everything they do for 3 days. I mean, like, that's quite a bit of evidence you're gathering for your client. There seems to be no understanding of consequences and actions, and that's Hunter's big problem. But when you've got friends like Kevin Morris advising you, it's really the worst combination. They're on a spiral of destruction, the two of them.
Yes. For the country's sake, I hope to expedite that spiral spin. Anything I can do to push these guys into destruction, I will, because the country succeeds then. Because we don't need these people embarrassing. They're an embarrassment to the nation, both of them.
Well, I mean, for me, as a journalist, all I wanted to do is tell the truth. And
Yes.
all I wanted to do was get the truth out there to as many people as possible and let the chips fall where they may. And, and I have no personal malice towards Hunter Biden, no personal malice towards Kevin Morris. I'm not going to. I know we've been making fun of his addictions here slightly, but it's not. If we never made My Son Hunter, which you can view at mysonhuntermovie.com. We never made it to make fun of Hunter Biden or to make fun of Joe Biden. We did it to expose their crimes.
Yep.
And
business related.
I think we did that well. And yes, yeah. Garrett, thank you very much for coming on the show. We could have you on every week, and maybe we will.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And thank you. Bye.
And that actually brings us on to another justice story. Justice, get it? Justice.
Very good.
Yes, Clarence Thomas. So ProPublica has done hit piece 974 about Clarence Thomas. They really hit this man, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, and they really want to bring him down, and they're determined to do anything, and they're determined to lie by omission or commission, as Kevin Morris would say, not. And so they ran a story, ProPublica, latest story is Justice Thomas attends far-right conservative conference run by the Koch brothers. It's two conferences, in fact, I think in 2018 and 2019. And, to illustrate it, they had a photograph of him at the conference and all basically, he attends a secret meeting of the far right-wing conspiracy, I suppose, to work out how to destroy America. And there you are. Look at that photograph, Anne. Look at the photograph they use. I mean, there he is at the conference.
He's definitely there.
They kind of say, with documentary filmmaker Ken Burns, they also add in the middle of it that Michael Bloomberg, the mayor of New York, also attended. Now, it's 4,500 words they use to say this is another ethical violation by Clarence Thomas, Justice Clarence Thomas. But, I mean, there's a thing that I have access to. Maybe ProPublica don't have access to it.
Oh, is that the Googling film?
There's a thing called Google, right, that I have access to. And if you just put in the words Ken Burns and Trump, you see Ken Burns describe Trump as Hitler-esque, the greatest, and this was actually described in a wonderful Wall Street Journal editorial, the greatest threat to American democracy since the Second World War. And Michael Bloomberg, my God, I mean, he hates him more than anything. He calls him a carnival barking crown, and even challenged him, didn't he, in 2020 to be president. So, and they don't say that the Koch brothers are anti-Trump, right? And have always been. I remember during the 2016 election, they sat out the 2016 election and they said voting for the choice between Hitler, the choice between Trump and Hillary Clinton is the choice between getting heart attack or cancer. So, and I suppose the reason they left all this out is because it's not the same story if it's Clarence Thomas attends conference with multitude of opinions and viewpoints about everything. Just because ProPublica journalism does not have multitudes of viewpoints. See, they're so unused. They think a conference or a
Has to be, everyone has to agree on everything.
everything has to agree on everything, right? They just can't understand.
Well, funny enough, because they conduct a lot of those conferences themselves. They
Yes.
have conferences. The left do that. They have conferences where everyone agrees on everything. And in fact, that's kind of a point with them. In fact, leftist conferences will exclude anyone
That's right.
who has any opinion that is that's marginally different than the
Accepted
than the
narrative.
accepted
By the way,
narrative.
they'll even exclude leftists who have difficulties about transgender nonsense or
Yeah.
anything like that.
Yeah.
You're gone. You're gone. I mean, they say that the Koch network is described as having spent 65 million supporting Republican candidates in the last election cycle. But they have dedicated tens of millions to running anti-Trump candidates. So.
Yeah, and I think part of the article says sort of that they're planning to spend tens of millions to defeat Trump in 2024.
So look, the reality is you're going to read a lot of stories going forward about Clarence Thomas, about how he is unethical, about how he does this and does that and the other. It's not that you need to look at the context or this, that, and the, you have to understand they are willing to lie by omission and commission to bring down Clarence Thomas because he is the most influential Supreme Court justice in decades. To quote someone, his rulings will what's that word?
Will be remembered forever.
Will be remembered forever.
Yeah.
Yes.
And will be significant.
Will filter down. He will influence judicial thinking for generations. And if only I knew someone who could do a play or a movie about Clarence Thomas, Anne. If only we could think of someone.
Watch this space.
Watch this space. Yes, indeed. So tell us more about the assault on justice and justices all over the world, actually. So Scotland, and this caught your eye. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Across the pond in Scotland, where the police are trained. They're being trained now to crack down on free speech. They're going to set up a special unit within the police in Scotland to crack down on free speech. Because obviously there's no crime at all in Scotland. So
Yes.
they don't need to be worried about anything except for this. So they've got a hate crime. They've got a hate crime coming up. And in order to implement a hate crime bill, and in order to, it's been passed. And what's going to happen is this is all going to come online in the new year. But obviously, before it does, they have to get all trained up. So the headline from one of the newspapers is: Police Scotland set up new unit to tackle hate crimes such as misgendering and denying men access to women's toilets. These are the crimes that really matter in Scotland. It's great. It's a marvellous thing, though. I actually think it's a great moment for Scotland because they don't have any crime. They don't have anything to worry about because this is where their focus needs to be. All their energy needs to be on this. So, basically, they're going to be enforcing this hate speech
And it will
law.
increase punishments for prejudice on the basis of age, disability, race, religion, sexual orientation, transgender identity, or variations in sex characteristics.
Advocates say the bill consolidates and clarifies existing hate speech laws.
Of course it does, but it means...
But it's introducing language. I thought this was very good. It's going to introduce language that will open up the vague phrase stirring up hatred to prosecution. Stirring up hatred. And I mean, that's open to anyone's interpretation, what your actions are that might have been stirring up hatred in somebody, because I would imagine it's in the eye of the beholder.
Well, I mean, if you think that children getting puberty blockers is damaging, destructive and diabolical, that could be seen as stirring up hatred against the
I would imagine
against
so.
the parents who support it, because you're calling what they're doing diabolical, destructive and evil, and that would engender a bit of hatred, rightfully so. But and apparently even if you say it in private, so there's Helen Joy, she's an Irish professor, but this is a quote from her in the Scottish Daily Express.
The establishment of a new dedicated hate crime unit at Police Scotland sends a sinister message to those who advocate for women's and children's rights. People need to be able to speak the truth about sex, to stand up for their own rights and to carry out safeguarding. Women can't explain why so-called trans women shouldn't be allowed to compete in women's sports without saying that, as a matter of material reality, trans women are men.
And if you say that, that is a hate crime now. So they try out these laws in these countries, these smaller countries, and then they come to you, or they try them out in California, and suddenly that spreads across the United States.
I have to say, there's a sinister kind of aspect, though, to the fact that this is located in Scotland, because as we know, J.K. Rowling lives in Scotland, and this is where she's chosen to have her home, and she obviously has these hateful ideas. And I think it's a way of them saying, we're coming for you. Because you can't even have these ideas quietly in your own home. You can't be thinking them even, And just when it, coming to kind of what's going on in your brain, like this kind of madness, that the policing of thought. All you need to do is go south of the border in the UK, go south from Scotland down to England, to read this awful story, dreadful story about Isabel Vaughan Spruce, who was arrested outside an abortion clinic in Birmingham for silently standing on the sidewalk
and praying.
But
silently praying.
Outside an abortion clinic. Let's just watch this video first, and then talk about it in a minute.
What are you here for today?
Physically, I'm just standing here.
Okay. Why here of all places? I know you don't live nearby.
But this is an abortion centre.
Okay. That's why you're stood here. Is you standing here part of the protest?
No. I'm not protesting.
Are you praying?
I might be praying in my head out loud.
So I'll ask you once more, will you voluntarily come with us now to the police station for me to ask you some questions about today and other days where there are allegations that you've broken public spaces protection?
If I've got a choice, then no.
Okay, well then you're under arrest on suspicion of failing to comply with the Public Spaces Protection Order, which is under the Antisocial Behaviour Crime and Policing Act 2014. Now, of course, you do not have to say anything. It may harm your defence if you do not mention one question, something which you later on in court, anything you do say may be given. Do you understand the caution?
I do.
Police said her actions were unlawful due to a new law that forbids intimidation and harassment within 150 metres of an abortion clinic. So she said, she was told by officers, you've said you're engaging in prayer, which is an offence, but it was silent prayer. And, they only dropped the charges after the Home Secretary, a Conservative Home Secretary, who, unlike many members of her government, is an actual Conservative, wrote to them and said, wrote to all police forces in the UK and said silent prayer is not illegal. Yeah. Then they dropped. But as Mark Stein says, the process is the punishment. She was under threat of prosecution for 6 months. Who's going to risk that again?
So this woman who was arrested, the woman who was silently praying, she's actually the head of, I'd like to see what it's called. She's the head of the March for Life in the United Kingdom. And she plans, which I think everyone would be happy to hear, she plans to continue the work she's doing. She plans to continue her advocacy. Silently praying. I mean, unbelievable, particularly when you put that up against what was allowed in the UK, what was allowed all over the world, by the way, with the BLM protests, which were violent and horrible behaviour. This woman standing on her own. I mean, you've seen the video. You've seen what she looks like. I mean, extraordinary. And the way that she's spoken to, it's very intimidating. I mean, and I think that's the whole idea, is that it's meant to it's meant to create a chilling effect. So segueing, very obvious segue here into just a little point that's kind of come up a number of times now with these new ballot measures going on across the United States, where the abortion issue is again up for debate. And one thing that the pro-abortion side are saying over and over and over again, and I think it's really important that people are armed with facts, that people know what they're dealing with, because stuff that the pro-abortion people say can sound really plausible. It can sound, yeah, that sounds about right. So one of the things they say is, because a lot of people on the pro-life side are saying, late-term abortions need to be completely outlawed. And weirdly, inverted commas, she says, weirdly, abortion up to 9 months is what they're pushing for. All the Democrats are pushing for that. By the way, including Robert F. Kay, who recently came out very clearly in favour of abortion up to 9 months. This is what they're advocating for. I don't know of, and you can correct me, anyone out there, of a Democrat who's against that, who's saying, talking about limits.
I can't think of
So
any.
basically, they're all saying up to 9 months. But then what they quickly follow up with saying, but it's negligible. The number of people having late-term abortions, it's so rare. It's so rare, right?
And it's always for life-threatening diseases.
And so it's very, very extreme, and incredibly rare. So let's just dig into that for a minute, and let me arm you with something, because I think it's really worthwhile. And so the source of the numbers that we are about to use now, the source is the pro-abortion Guttmacher Institute.
Yes.
That's where we're
Bear
getting.
in mind, they're pro-abortion.
They're very pro-abortion. The kind of the intellectual side of Planned Parenthood, I think, is probably one way to
So
describe
according
them.
to the Guttmacher Institute,
According to them,
there are over a million abortions. I want to say one thing. According to the Guttmacher Institute, there are over 1 million abortions in the US every year. We don't know that's true.
And the reason we don't know that that's true is that there is no requirement to report. So there is no there's certain parts of America where you're required to report, but it's not universal, and it's all very voluntary. And we know, for example, in Pennsylvania, we know this ourselves because of the Gosnell story. Gosnell operated a clinic for decades. It wasn't a pop-up store. He was there for decades, and we know that in Pennsylvania you were required to give the numbers and to report them, and he didn't, and he never did. And guess what? Nothing ever happened.
You got award after award.
So, and the idea, by the way, that there's anything necessarily different happening around the country. So that's to put the 1 million abortions a year in context. So it's very likely that that's very conservative and very much on the low side. So 930,000, I think it is. 930,000.
Yeah.
So what the Guttmacher Institute says is that only 1% of all abortions, only 1% of all abortions are late-term abortions. Well, that's 9,300 third trimester abortions.
And as we say,
9,300. That is not a small number.
but also it's much more than that. We know that because are you sure that every late-term abortion facility reports the numbers?
Well, that's kind of the point I was making, exactly, that they're not required to, and we know that
it could
in
be
Gosnell's
2%,
case,
it could be 3%.
like in Gosnell's case, they didn't do it, and you know, they didn't report, and we have absolutely no reason to believe, for any reason at all, that would not be, that same behaviour is not happening around the country. Why wouldn't it be?
Yes.
Pennsylvania is not a backwater. Pennsylvania is a very progressive place. It's very developed. They have lots of great laws, all of that business. Police, they've got all kinds of enforcement agencies. Why, if it happened, if Gosnell got away with it, why would you not think people are getting away with murder, by the way?
Yes.
In Florida,
So,
in
so we
Massachusetts.
can't trust the headline figure of the million abortions, and we can't trust the 9,300 figure. But let's just say it's 9,000.
No, I'm happy to go with it, by the way. I'm really happy to go with that. So you're talking about just short of 10,000 late-term abortions, third trimester abortions every year. And here's the kicker to this that I think is important, again, for everyone to think about. Because, again, the pro-abortion side will constantly say that, oh, but it's all this very extreme, and it's, you know, and it's incest, and it's rape, and it's all this kind of stuff. The truth is, and you'll remember quite recently, we interviewed, I think it was back in June, we interviewed a nurse who had worked at the Hearn Boulder late-term abortion clinic in Boulder, Colorado. And we interviewed her because at the very same time, a very lengthy article had come out in the Atlantic magazine about Warren Hearn, who runs that clinic and has run that clinic forever. Yeah. And he said, by the way, he's a big believer in late-term abortion. He said, half of the late-term abortions they do, at least half, were for whatever reason. The truth is, by the way,
no medical necessity.
And I think actually it's interesting because I'm not sure 100% I'd believe Warren Hearn on everything. I'm not sure I'd trust him on everything. Because according to the Guttmacher Institute, late-term abortion the reasons are the same as for any other time that abortion is done.
Mostly social.
So people need to be pushing back on this stuff. This idea that it's rare, 10,000 babies is not rare, not even slightly rare. And the idea then that it's some kind of extreme situation, again, nonsense. And by the way, just a quick segue on that I wanted to mention. I watched the most extraordinary television programme on Virgin Media about a clinic
in Ireland.
It's an Irish TV thing that I got access to. And basically the programme was about children, the outcome for children who were born very, 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 very early. And the show was called Born Too Soon. And it was an incredible program for two reasons. One, what they're able to do nowadays with babies that are born really, really, really early. But the other thing that I thought was really important they had in the show was showing what they do, what they call perinatal hospice. An extraordinary thing where there was, for example, a couple in the show who they were pregnant with twins and one of the children wasn't going to make it. But there was never a suggestion of aborting the baby, not even slightly, that they brought the baby, kept monitoring the births right up until the babies were both born. And the little one, the one that wasn't going to make it, did live for a while, was baptized, beautifully by the father. I mean, incredible, and always remember that. Actually, a priest mentioned that to us yesterday, Phelim, that anyone can baptize, any baptized person can baptize a baby.
Excellent.
And I thought, yeah, no, the priest mentioned that yesterday. We were talking to a priest yesterday about that. But I'm kind of wrong. I'm getting off topic slightly. Maybe I'm not, but
No.
this
I
idea.
I think we have a friend, a doctor in Los Angeles. I won't go into any more details. And he said the thing that turned him against abortion was when he was studying medicine.
Yes.
Was he was literally at one end of a corridor dealing with preemies, 23, 24. Back then was probably a bit more, 28, 29 weeks then. You can save them now much earlier. And he says then... three doors down, they were aborting babies at the same age, and he was going, "This is something. It's not logical. It doesn't add up.
Yeah.
How can we be spending millions of dollars to save these babies, but saying it's legal to kill the same babies at the same age? That's the illogicality of abortion, especially late-term abortion."
Yeah. Phelim, you have a story about complete madness from California, which our hometown it will be very affected by this.
So basically, honestly, if you ever read a story about homeless and they don't mention the Boise judgment, ignore it, because they're not telling you the truth, right? And this is very important, and I'm it's kind of a segue from what the main story, but there was an attempt to take people off the streets. And homeless people, and force them to find accommodation. And a homeless advocacy group, I think it was in the city of Boise in Idaho, took a case and said, "Oh no! It's unconstitutional to take someone off the street if you don't have housing for them."
Yeah.
And they took it to the court, of course, in San Francisco. And they said,
the Ninth Circuit.
Yes, and they said, "Oh yeah, that's right." So it's now illegal to remove people from the street, and that only happened like 6 or 7 or 8 years ago, and that's when the homeless population exploded. Nothing to do with COVID, nothing to do with anything like that. That's when the tent cities appeared, and so that is the root cause. It's these homeless advocacies. Then they raised 2 to 3 billion in a bond issue in LA to fight homelessness. And surprise, surprise, that old conservative idea, if you spend money on something, it will increase rather than decrease. We've had more and more homeless. The more services they provided to people living on the street, the more it attracted people to come from all over the United States to live in the streets. So we have a homeless crisis in LA, and I can tell you that from looking outside my door. And so the solution is to force every hotel in Los Angeles to take homeless people. Well, the obviously the hotel owners, and it's funny. It's a union. It's pushed by the unions.
Which is bizarre. Kind of bizarre.
Let's let the hotel owners association. They put out this video, and actually, it says it better than we possibly could. Let's watch that video.
Los Angeles Hotel Workers Union, Unite Here Local 11, wants to turn hotels into homeless shelters.
Special change.
The union's idea would force hotels to provide rooms to the homeless, putting tourists and paying guests at risk, and exposing hotel employees to hazardous situations.
Hungry?
It would be funny if it wasn't so scary. Learn more at homelesshotels.com.
So it's kind of funny. Obviously, the video is kind of funny in a way, right?
Yeah.
But it's not very funny when, the effect this will have on tourism would be just devastating. And tourism is an incredibly important industry in Southern California. My God, Southern California, that's what it's famous for, right?
Yeah, but leftists hate tourism too. They do. They hate. They don't like tourists, because tourism in the old days used to be lady this and that going on a grand tour of Europe. Now it's three barmaids who don't understand culture at all, going on a cheap flight to somewhere.
To Greece? Why
to
not?
Greece, yes.
Why not? And going to the Acropolis? Why not?
Or lying on a beach. So
yes.
They hate tourism. They hate mass tourism, and they have some idea that this is going to protect their workers' jobs. It's just weird. See, I think then what they'll say is, "Oh, you have got government." They'll make it that if you get money from the government, you have to accept unions, you have to accept this rule, that rule, and the other rule. And it's another way of making sure hotels are under the power of the unions and the city. So, You know, and people are wondering why 500,000 people left California in the last couple of years. So you've got a story, Anne.
We're going to finish with this story, but I think this is fantastic. So you know our friend who is now a frequent friend on the show, which is Bran Dove, this young 14-year-old girl in Ireland who, you know, recited the extraordinary poem at the Let Women Speak March in Belfast, I think last year, I Am Not a Dress. And then spoke again, and we had that speech of hers on last week. But anyway, I recommend for people to follow her on Twitter. She's very clever and very smart, great girl. But anyway, she has put up a thing on Twitter this week where she has discovered this completely mad. But by the way, as I say this, I'm realizing this is what's happening in schools everywhere. But sometimes it's good to just actually really, really see it. So Villiers is a posh school in Limerick, which is in Ireland. And they've put out a couple of these videos, you know, by the students teaching, you know, so they can teach other students how things should really be, you know.
Yeah.
So let's have a look at this. There's 2 videos, but maybe I'll just show one.
Just show one. Show that cultural appropriation.
Yes, let's look at this first one.
Oh, gee, you got your braids and I love them.
Yeah, thanks.
I want to get them done for longitude. I think they're so exotic.
You shouldn't. My culture isn't an accessory.
What do you mean? I've never tried them before. I want to get them.
Yeah, I know, but this is for my culture, not for your fashion.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have known, but I had to learn.
I should have known, but I had to learn. I should have known, but I had to learn.
So please, appreciate and respect other cultures without disrespecting them. This video is made by People of Color Alliance Villiers. Thank you for watching.
You know, and the chanting, by the way, the chanting bit is actually, that's the bit that's kind of extraordinary, right? This is really awful. I was sort of saying to Phelim earlier,
Zombies.
Is it a thing then? Because I'm Irish, can I make a pizza, Phelim? Do you think that'll be all right, or is
as long as you don't speak English when you do it?
All right. If I spoke Italian while I was making the pizza, it would be okay.
Well, speaking English, English is not our natural language.
See, English is not our natural language, so are we appropriating English?
And that
then?
necklace, by the way, was where did you get that? Greece, or did I buy that for you? Was that
you
in
bought
Israel?
that in America?
Yeah, that was made by Israelis.
How do you know that?
I was in the shop and it was made by Israelis.
And is that an appropriation then of something?
Anyway, we need our Jewish friends.
No, we need to talk to the Villiers students because they're obviously
they're the arbiters, you know.
Just horrible. I mean, but this kind of brainwashing. This is where the energy in high schools. This is what the staff in the Villiers school are putting their energy into.
I mean, you think about James Joyce's literature, Ulysses. It's a mixture of French, German, Latin, English. Are
you pushing, Phelim, a white middle-aged man's literature now on people? Nobody wants to hear white middle-aged men's literature, Phelim. We need to be hearing something diverse, right? From people of colour and from people from names of countries that you can't pronounce properly. That's the type of thing we need, really, isn't it?
I suppose I apologise and hope the good children, the good robots of Villiers will forgive me.
Yes. Anyway, I might bring the second video to you next week. Anyway, yes. We've come to the end of the show.
Yes.
Please let us know what any thoughts you have about anything that we're doing. We have some big news coming very soon.
Yes.
And we'll tell you that next week. But for now, we'll say bye. Have a great week.
Arrivederci. Are we allowed to say that?
Oh yeah.
Bonjour.
Au revoir. Bonjour. Something, yeah.
By the way, is that what do you call Hilaria Baldwin? That was a bit.
That's a little bit of. There was a bit of appropriation going on there now.
What was her children's names? Burrito.
No, Phelim. That's what you said. The names of the children weren't. It's not what the children's names were.
What's the name Spanish for that?
Barcelona. Okay. Bye now.